On the mic, Zack.
I am here on the mic. I am talking. We've discovered that the words that come out of my mouth have sounds.
And they mean things.
They try to.
Everything good on your end?
Everything is good, sir.
Excellent. You had a nice audition for a big feature film, I think, right? We're not going to talk about exactly what it was, but that's exciting.
Yeah, I had 2 auditions back to back. I'm hoping to hear some good news soon. It's a very big movie. Would be great to get it, honestly, just to get the credit. But this is one of those movies that, well, if you get to be in this movie, millions of people get to see your face. So it would be an epic booking if I were to get it.
Oh, heck yes. And I would say, just so our listeners know, I actually do know the movie, and millions is an understatement. This is going to be a major, major film. So huge, not only that Zack got the audition, but doubly huge that the casting director that clearly works on big things likes Zack as much as they do.
Yeah, agreed. It's a big deal. It's a great relationship. I'm very grateful for that casting director. So very cool stuff.
Yeah, dude, congrats. We're excited to get into this episode. It's going to be all about intermittent fasting, or fasting in general, I should say. So for those of you that maybe have heard about it or dabbled in it or maybe read a little bit about fasting, we're going to get into it. It's going to be fun. We're going to cover a couple different topics. We're going to analyze it a little bit. We're going to discuss it, and we're going to talk about some of our personal anecdotes, some of the research that's been done. Can fasting cure type 2 diabetes? Does fasting kill or eat away your muscle? Or will you be able to keep that muscle during fasting? Will your brain still function while you're fasting? Or is it going to hurt you in the work environment? Will fasting make you live a longer life and look and feel younger? And of course, can just eating one meal a day be an entire way of life? These and much more in just a few minutes. You're not going to want to miss it. Now, before we get into it, we have a couple of updates, of course, and then we'll circle back with the real meat and potatoes of the episode. I'm off to my normal crazy schedule recently. I told you briefly, but literally this past week, it was a week ago Monday, not this most recent one, but the one before that, I had to drive to Santa Barbara in the morning for a gig. Then I had to drive that same day back to Los Angeles and then all the way down to San Diego because I had a gig the following day. Then I was there for 2 days, then had to drive back to Los Angeles because I had to fly out on Thursday for a gig in Napa Valley, Sonoma Valley on Friday. Literally did that gig on Friday and basically slept for like 2 or 3 hours because I had a flight the next morning at 6 a.m. So I had to leave, since it's a drive from Sonoma back to the San Francisco airport. I had to leave at like 3:30 in the morning, drove back to that, landed in Los Angeles, drove straight to a job I had in Torrance, worked the entire day, and then I drove, and this is kind of a funny one, I'll mention exactly what it was. Then I drove to Laguna Beach and was the host for a murder mystery birthday party, theme party. So there was all these people showing up in costumes and literally doing this murder mystery theme. Kind of a cool party, beautiful house in Laguna, great couple whose birthday it was, the wife's birthday. So that was fun, random. Finished that at like midnight, obviously running on 3 hours of sleep, crazy day. Drove home the following day, had another gig in Torrance, so did that. Drove home, slept. Monday, flew to Monterey, California, Carmel by the Sea area, just southwest of San Jose there. So all that to say, obviously crazy schedule, as Zack has pointed out before, but what it was kind of cool that basically within less than 7 days, I hit every major city in California and basically every major county between Santa Barbara, Orange County, Torrance, Los Angeles, Sonoma, Napa Valley, San Jose, Mount Carmel, Monterey area, and then San Diego. Full California, but wild few days there.
I would agree. It sounds more like every major city in California hit you with that schedule, Mr. Cummings.
Yeah. Believe me, when I woke up, I guess it was a Sunday morning after that epic, 4-day stretch where I ended in the murder mystery party, which of course was grueling and energetic in itself, although awesome and rewarding. I did feel like I was hit in the side of the face by an entire city that morning. Trying to get up and go to the job I had was not easy, so to speak.
Crazy stuff, man.
It is. It is crazy stuff. But we got to do it. That's what we do, right? We grind and we audition. Oh, yeah. And of course, in between and during some of those experiences, I was doing auditions where I could from my hotel room or sending a voiceover audition. So
Yeah, well, thank God
Oh,
it's all self-tape now. Otherwise, you would have been screwed.
yes. Yeah. And let's not forget editing the podcast.
Yes.
Got to do that too.
Yeah. Priority one.
Priority one. Priority one. Oh, and I think we do have an announcement. There may be a VHS tape that Zach was able to find.
Yes, we have some good news on that front. I have recovered what is possibly the actual VHS tape footage of me as Pumbaa in the Lion King song that I did in my
Oh,
senior year of high school.
now we are talking. Yeah, I
I
know
have
someone that especially is going to be excited. I know my sister was excited about seeing that footage there, Zach.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun edition. I've got another tape. It's potentially of my high school graduation. I haven't mentioned this in the podcast yet. I have the tape. I'm not sure if it's there, but for my high school graduation, I was picked to sing the Star Spangled Banner as a solo with the choir teacher. And I was so nervous in the beginning, right? It was like an auditorium at Brooklyn College, and it was probably something like, I don't know, 800 or 1,000 people in a space. And I was nervous singing the Star Spangled Banner. And I got like 2 lines into it and I completely forgot the words. And the choir teacher was freaking out and giving me an angry face while she was playing. She was trying to mouth the words to me. And eventually I figured it out. But everyone thought it was a joke when it happened because they know I was the funny guy. They had seen me as Pumbaa on stage that year. So they thought I was messing around. But it was a true, like, I literally forgot my lines in that moment. It's like the actor's nightmare. So I think I have that on the VHS tape as well. Thank you to my sister for pulling that stuff from the collection. I've got to find a place to get them digitized, which is a little pricey, but it's worth it for the pod, worth it for the history. So yeah, more updates on that to come.
That's going to be fun, man. Thank you to your sister, of course. And yeah, sounds like a lot of fun. So anyway, let's get into this next episode. What episode are we up to here, Zach?
Oh boy, is it 852 at this point?
Eight.
Not quite. We're not quite there yet.
852. You know, that there'll be a day where we can say that.
There will be a day.
There will. Yeah, so we're up to episode 6 here on the Joe and Zack podcast. Welcome back, everyone. As always, thank you for joining us. Super thankful to our listeners. We've gotten some new comments since our last podcast, so thank you. Some great feedback on our most recent episode, which was the longest episode ever, I think.
It was the longest one we did because we really just got into it. We had a lot of ground to cover. And I will say some of those comments are great. Some of them are wild. And no, I don't care how many times you ask, I am not sending you feet pictures. It's not happening. So stop asking.
No, that's for the After Dark. That's for the After Dark.
Right. After Dark. Sorry. Kids show.
So let's talk about fasting. Now, this is going to be kind of an interesting convo, folks, because I do a little bit of intermittent fasting, but it's not something I sort of, so to speak, live my life with. But Zach has made it a way of life. So we have a little bit of a yin and yang here. So it's going to be fun to talk about. I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate here and there just for the listeners to have some fun because Zach gets common questions from people about it. But Zach, why don't you kick it off here for us?
Absolutely. So intermittent fasting is a way of life for me. It has been since September of 2011. That's when I started doing fasting. And so now I am, 13 years now into fasting. And I've learned a lot. I've come a long way. I'm always looking at new research on it. And I think that one of the things that is kind of noteworthy to me today is that when I started doing fasting, I was doing OMAD. I've done OMAD for a long time. OMAD means 1 meal a day, OMAD. And when I started doing it, there wasn't a lot of people talking about it, and there wasn't a lot known about it. So whenever I told someone I was fasting for the day, I was skipping breakfast, lunch, and only eating at night, everyone thought I was a little bit crazy. But everyone also noticed that I lost 60 pounds. So they were like, well, it's definitely working. So back then in 2011, it was kind of like a quiet thing, even though fasting's been around for millennia. Now I'm part of a fasting group on Facebook, and people share their stories and troubles. And it's part of a network of people by Dr. Jason Fung, F-U-N-G. He's one of the top leading doctors in terms of fasting right now. So I tend to follow a lot of his stuff and a lot of his research. But there's millions of people now online talking about their intermittent fasting. And I love it because I'm not the only person doing it anymore. I will say, which is odd enough, that in my life and in my circle, almost nobody does any kind of fasting. I know a couple of people who have tried it, but nobody does it the way I do it. within my network of people, I'm still like on a solo rogue mission. But fasting is a way of life for me because it's so helpful and beneficial and it's so easy and the results are always there.
Zach, to that end, if you don't mind me asking,
Yeah.
before we get into more of the specifics about it and some of the more science behind it, as you've enlightened me, I should say, autophagy. We'll get into that specifically, which is the cleaning up of dead or old cells and
Yeah. It's the cleaning up of dead cells in the body. Autophagy, AUTOPHAGY. Google
so
that.
yeah, so it's really cool. Zach taught me about that, and I've read about it and learned about it, and it's really interesting. But before we get into that and some of the science, Zach, let's, if you don't mind me asking, because I know you've told me, but I forget, what actually initially was how you learned about intermittent fasting or one meal a day, which is how you started and kind of lived your life. And when you did learn about it at that time, what made you think, you know what, this is going to be for me?
This is a great question, actually. So in the summer of 2011, as you remember, so I was 2 years into that catering job where you and I met. Summer is usually slow season for catering, so I had a lot of time off. I was also at my biggest weight. I was about 250 pounds. I was pretty round, rotund, wasn't happy. And I had tried every kind of diet and every kind of different thing and workout regimen known to man. But at the time, my diet was pretty shitty. I can tell you that for a long time, before I had started fasting, one of the things I was doing was in the morning, I would have my Dunkin' Donuts coffee with milk and sugar. Okay. Very important to note that. But I would also get a croissant with bacon, egg, and cheese. And a lot of times that would be my breakfast. And then I would eat nothing and I'd go the entire day until maybe I worked that evening and I would eat on the job or I would get something or whatever. So I was basically only eating once in the morning and I was eating once in the night. And I remember thinking that some years prior, I had become a fan. Well, not really a fan because I hated doing it. But around the time I was 25 and dealing with some knee surgeries, that is a whole other story. I don't want to talk about that right now. That can be another story for another time. Knees are all good, thank God. I was doing 4 to 6 small meals a day. And that was something I had tried for a while. And it was working, but it was so much work. And it was so
Yeah,
annoying. It's
yeah,
so annoying and it's
it's a
so
lot of work.
stressful. It's
I've
too
done
much.
some of that myself. For
Yeah.
anyone that doesn't know, there was a time about a 3-year period where I was doing fitness modeling, so super low body fat, muscle growth, and that's what I was doing. I was doing 4 to 5 meals a day, so I know quite a bit about that journey in itself, and I can say without a doubt, it's extremely hard and not really enjoyable, truthfully.
Yeah, it's not enjoyable at all. We'll come back to this when I discuss fasting. But
Yeah.
one of the things I was doing and trying to lose weight, even though I was having like my Dunkin' Donuts croissant every
Well, you
day.
know, Zach, it's funny you're saying that you did the Dunkin' Donuts in the morning and then the one meal at night. Is you were kind of intermittent fasting then, just
A
only
little,
during the middle part of the day.
yeah, pretty much. But if you look at it, it was only in between those two meals on average, I would say it was really only about somewhere around 9 or 10 hours without a meal. And that's not really intermittent fasting because the benefits of fasting really don't kick off until 16 to 20 hours. So when you're
Okay.
doing
Okay.
OMAD, because it already takes after your last meal, it takes 12 hours for all of your glucose reserves and everything that's in your system to be digested. So it's only from 12 hours on that the fasting properties begin, and really at 16 hours is where things kick off. I was going to my boxing coach and I was going hardcore. I remember for a month because I used to go to New York Sports Club back then. And I had this great boxing teacher who used to be semi pro. And you'd go to his class and it was an incredible workout. It was like running a marathon in an hour boxing class. The guy was a gem. I loved going to this guy. And I had the free time. I was upset at how fat I was. So I started following him around New York to the different gyms because I could go to any gym at that time. And I was probably doing his boxing class 4 or 5 times a week for the entire month of August. And I remember seeing my weight after putting in so much work. I was killing myself in these boxing classes.
But
And
you're
the
probably
weight,
gaining some muscle too, though, I would imagine.
I probably gained muscle for sure, but the fat wasn't coming off. And I was
Gotcha.
pretty upset that that wasn't coming off because I was going hardcore. You could just go to this guy's boxing class once a week and it's an amazing workout. You'd be set. I was going 4 times a week and the fat
Right.
wasn't coming off. So I thought, okay,
But you hadn't
I
changed your nutrition at all during that time either?
didn't change my diet. Nope. And like
Gotcha.
they say, it all starts in the kitchen.
How were your, sleep patterns? Getting
But
regular 8-hour night sleep kinda thing, or not
I was
really?
probably sleeping however normally I was sleeping back then. I couldn't tell you. It's too long ago. The problem for me was the diet. And the first thing I started looking into was the myth of starvation mode. So all this boxing isn't working. I'm still not dropping any fat. Maybe there's something real to starvation mode because I'm having my breakfast in the morning and I'm not eating again until the nighttime. So maybe I'm going on this starvation mode thing. So I go on this crazy research rabbit hole and I'm looking up different articles about starvation mode and different kinds of feedback. Is it real? Is it not real? First of all, starvation mode, complete myth. It is not a thing. Starvation mode is when you have not had food for about 40 some odd days and you continue to not eat anything because there is no food around you. And what happens is the body begins to eat itself completely. Now you are starving and you are close to death. That is what starvation mode is. Most people, especially in a first world country like America, don't experience that because there's food on every corner that you can go buy anywhere, anytime. And that's why people are fat and sick.
All this to basically combat a lot of naysayers out there that and don't get me wrong, I'm a devil's advocate. I'm not like a full intermittent fasting believer, so to speak, necessarily. I don't live my life that way, although I do believe in the science behind it. But there's a lot of naysayers out there that say, oh, if you're fasting, you're just starving yourself. And what Zach is pointing out here is, no, let's not mix two and two together here. There's people with real life food insecurity issues in this world, and they really are starving, and it's sad, and it's something that should never happen. Someone that chooses to intermittent fast is not starving here.
Correct. And fasting is flexible, so you can break your fast at any time. And the reason why the body stores body fat is in the case of a famine. There's no food. I need reserves. That's why people have body fat on them. The body knows what it's doing. Fasting has been around for millennia. It's in our ancient roots as human beings.
Well, think about the nomads, right? Back in the day
Correct.
when there was no farming, there was no agriculture, so to speak, what did people do? The men woke up in the morning and they went hunting all day long till they got food. They came home at night. Everyone in the tribe or everyone in the group ate food, ate that meat that they found. Next morning, woke up, did the same thing, hunted all day, didn't really have a lot of food, brought food home, everyone ate at night. It was basically intermittent fasting, right?
Pretty much intermittent fasting. And it's important too. It's a very simplistic thing to point out, but fasting versus intermittent fasting, right? So people confuse those two things. But intermittent is very important as part of the terminology so that people understand this is about time restricted eating. This is about I'm taking this period of time to fast, to not ingest any sugar, any bread, any protein, because it's a matter of going 20 hours, 40 hours, not having anything in your system so that you get the benefits of a fast. But what led me to discover fasting was I was doing all this research on starvation mode, and one of the articles was talking about it, and it led into intermittent fasting. And I remember seeing this article for the first time, and I remember looking at it and going, wait. There's somebody who's saying, because remember, I told you I had previously tried the 4 to 6 meals a day, hated that. You
Right.
know, most people eat 3 meals a day. The only reason why people eat 3 meals a day is because it helps the economy. The only reason breakfast is the most important meal of the day is so that everybody buys cereal.
Right. It's like that food pyramid that now has been turned on its head that we were all
Right.
ingrained as we were growing up, and they've learned that it's all just a whole crock of shit, right?
Yep, because all the corporations want you to keep spending money on their products. Okay, that's why you eat 3 meals a day. This is not withstanding for people who have, say, diabetes type 1 and need to take insulin, or people who have certain disorders or diseases that need to eat certain. This is also a great moment to say, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an expert. Right? Neither is Joe in this arena. This is just
Right.
our personal experience. And anything that we talk about, you can go ahead and Google yourself, and I'm going to name some people for you. But
This podcast is for entertainment, informational purposes. It's not the Holy Grail. We are not experts, and this is not per se advice, right?
correct.
This is just entertainment and information. And I do want to reiterate that I am more of a 3-4 meal a day, small meals, every now and again, intermittent fast guy. I don't live my life like Zack does in that way. And that's not a judgment thing. That's just what I choose to do for me. So I'm more in the 3 meal a day camp than Zack. But over time, after learning a lot and listening to Zack and reading things on my own research, I have become a believer in certain aspects of intermittent fasting. And I do agree that there's a lot of great evidence behind the benefits of it.
Absolutely. So I had discovered this article, and this guy was talking about some form of 1 meal a day. He was talking about not eating for 20 hours. And I was like, whoa, could I do that? And I shit you not, I was doing all that boxing. I was so frustrated. I had put in so much work, man. I was really trying, dude. So the very first thing that I did was cut out my Dunkin' Donuts bacon, egg, and cheese croissant. It was the first thing I did. And
Yeah, that was
I
smart.
stopped putting milk and sugar in the coffee. So I was still getting my Dunkin' iced coffee, but completely black, no sugar, because sugar breaks a fast. So,
Right.
and so does milk because it's protein.
Plus,
So essentially,
that's sort of that bad sugar that you don't really need in your body. It's not like the good sugars you get from fruit and stuff like that.
yeah, it's the starchy, carby, white sugar, etc. That'd be a good nickname for me as a rapper. White sugar is something to put down and talk about one day. Oh snap!
We
White
got-
sugar coming in. Here we go.
We got next on the mic. Let's give it up for White Sugar.
Yo, what's up? We're talking about intermittent fasting. Yeah, they used to call me the ill cracker. True story. I like to fast because I do it faster. Anyway, I don't want to get the ladies excited. Okay,
Oh,
we'll
wow.
save this for another episode.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, talk about
After
a panty
dark.
dropper. Wow.
Woo! Kid show. Okay, so the very first thing I did was drop the sugar in the morning. I just had iced black coffee, no sugar. And then I would work in the evening on catering and I would eat the staff meal at that time. And I had discovered a book called The Warrior Diet. And I would later learn.
I remember
Yes.
this time. I remember
It
talking
was
to you about it at the
for
time.
For years, I called it The Warrior Diet because it's the book that I read on fasting. And I was following this guy's approach.
Was it because of the fact that you found that you got less pushback when you told people it was a diet rather than the fact that you were just doing 1 meal a day or that you were fasting? If you told people, no, I'm following the warrior diet, you felt like there was less stigma?
Well, it just made it easy to explain. I told
Right,
people that there
right.
was a book and I'm not just creating some crazy thing on my own. But at the same time, the results were happening. You can still read it. The guy who wrote it, he was an ex-Israeli special forces,
Mm-hmm.
and his name is Ori Hofmeckler. And it would be some years later, almost
Good
maybe
name.
great name, 6 or 7 years later, turns out that I was in a scene study class with the daughter of this guy. Completely fucking blew my mind.
That's
Completely
great.
blew my mind.
I almost don't even
Because
believe that. You never told me
it's
that.
true story.
That's
And
insane.
wildly insane in terms of this coincidence, right?
I wonder what she's up to now. Maybe she's in Hollywood.
Nope, she's not. I'm still in touch with her over Facebook, but I had been posting
okay.
I started posting about the Warrior Diet on Facebook. She's like, that's my dad, right? And then we talked about it, and
That's wild.
pretty fucking wild connection. But let's talk about just the beginning, okay?
Crazy,
So
dude.
immediately,
We're literally living in a simulation. That's so
it's all
crazy.
simulated. This is all fake. It's not really happening.
That is
So
wild. When stuff like
wanna
that
say-
happens, it's just wild.
Well, it makes you wonder, really. It makes you fucking wonder.
It's
So
wild.
I want to say the day was September 9th, 2011. I think that was the day I started the Warrior Diet. I did it and I made sure. So basically, it was about giving yourself 20 hours in a fasted state and then having a very specific meal window. So when I began, I went from 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. That was my 4-hour window because I was working at night a lot and I was eating during that time. And it was basically saying, as long as you get in your 20 hours of fasting, then your meal window, you can eat as much as you want until you feel full. Eventually, you don't like stuffing your face because it's just too much. But I remember in the beginning, I was making sure that I ate a lot in my meal window just in case. So I had basically stuck to OMAD for a very long time. Within the first 3 months, I dropped, I want to say 30 pounds of fat. And people
10
were seeing
pounds a
me.
month. Wow, yeah.
Yeah, because I had a lot to lose.
Mhm.
And my body had never experienced fasting before.
Yeah.
So the more you have to lose, the faster it comes off. So people are looking at me. They're like, holy shit, you're getting skinny. What's going on? And I was also still weight training. So I was always weight training during my fasting window. So,
Nice.
and I was doing some form of cardio as well. And I remember by the time 8 months had come in, I had lost a total of 60 pounds. So I went down from 250 to 190 and I gained 10 pounds of solid muscle. So for a long time, I was running around 200 pounds and I was continuing on OMAD. Now, quick benefits
And tell
to
everyone quickly, Zach, how tall you are, just so people have some context.
6 feet 2 inches.
Yep. So 6 feet
Okay.
two, a 200 pound, 6'2" guy, that's really not bad. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
You're probably not as quite low body fat, or you're probably not quite to the BMI body mass index that you want to be at yet, or at least not your ideal. But you're
No.
not bad. You're in pretty good, especially with the extra musculature you were gaining. You're in pretty good shape at that point.
Yes. So I got really thin from what I had used to be. And the other thing about fasting, I remember just trying it for the first week. And I was like, I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm just going to stick it out for a week. I'm just going to commit. So some of the things you realize when you do OMAD, one meal a day.
And Zach,
It's
would you still do coffee in the mornings, or would you not even do that, just water in between those 20 hours?
I have black coffee every morning. I do not start my day without coffee. I
Got
always
it.
have coffee. Proven benefits for the brain and the heart. A cup of coffee a day is totally fine. Sometimes two is totally fine. But people who don't drink coffee also, science has proven, go ahead and Google it. Coffee actually keeps your brain sharp and it's also good for your heart. And a lot of people think, oh, coffee is bad, this and that. Coffee is bad when you have 5 cups of coffee a day and you're not sleeping. Coffee is also bad when you're adding all kinds of sugar and caramel crap and whatnot, foam.
Yeah, and the high, in the
Right.
milk and the heavy
Then you're
milk and stuff.
Then you're drinking. It's like you're drinking pizza. That's when coffee's bad. So anyway, I swear by coffee. I love my iced black coffee.
They have a lot of flavored coffees out there, but I've never seen a pizza or pepperoni pizza coffee. I don't know. Color me intrigued, or maybe I'm
It
just a
hasn't
weirdo.
happened yet. It might taste disgusting, but it could be something. It could be something we add to the merch store down the line for the Joe and Zach pod. You
The
got to
Joe and
try their
Zack
pizza flavored coffee. How
Oh
gross
my
does that sound?
gosh. That would be hilarious.
There might be someone out there who needs it. That might help some people.
That sounds like a fun t-shirt, but never actually a digestible product.
Yeah, we can sell it somewhere. There's a market for it. So, so I just want to wrap up. In OMAD, the thing about fasting is it's incredibly flexible. It's incredibly easy. You're not spending as much money because you're not worried about breakfast and lunch. You have so much more time on your hands. You feel better. Another thing that happens with fasting, when you Google fasting, it's, I want to say, brain-derived neurotropic factor, BDNF. It's a hormone that releases in the brain when you're fasting that gives you this mental clarity, which you think about it from our ancestors from hundreds, thousands of years ago in terms of that nomad survival state. You might not eat for 3 or 4 days. So there's this sense of optimism that kicks in with the BDNF, and you get this sharp brain clarity. And essentially, it's like this sense of optimism increases because it's your hunter instinct. You got to stay sharp. You got to keep the tribe alive.
Now,
So really
Zach,
cool stuff.
I said I would play some devil's advocate, and this is a perfect opportunity for me to do so. Also, I still wonder about this myself. When it comes to intermittent fasting, you say you get that brain neuropathy thing. Well, what about the people that say, well, hey, when I don't eat enough, or when I'm hungry, or if I haven't eaten a little while, I'm working throughout my day, I feel like my glucose levels are low, and I start to feel like I can't think straight and I can't even work anymore. I got to go eat something.
Great point. This is, if you are a completely normal person medically, right? This is for you.
Yeah, and I'm talking about like a
Right.
normal, yeah,
Right.
exactly. Not someone that has diabetes or anything.
Correct. So when people get what we'll call as hangry, okay, and people get annoyed because they haven't eaten, I'm going to say that is your conditioning.
And by the way, I do get hangry. I get very hangry. If anyone doesn't know, if you see me mad, I probably just need to eat.
Just put a piece of pizza in his face. Feed Joe. Don't
That-
feed Joe.
That
when he's
always
angry.
works.
Feed Joe when
That
he's
always
angry.
works. Yeah.
Pizza usually does the job. So
And said like the Hulk, my line is, you won't like me when I'm hungry.
there you go. You won't like Joe when he's hungry. You won't like Joe a lot of the time, but there's hungry is
stop
definitely hungry is definitely one of them. No, Joe's
Dude,
got
it's
his.
funny actually. My mom said that I was her best baby, and I was a really good baby. Didn't cry a lot. Was always good. But the one time that I wasn't, and she said ever since, even before I could talk, and then all through my childhood too, if I was ever angry or unhappy, it was just because I was hungry. Even before I could talk,
Wow.
she's like, "Okay, let's feed him." And then as soon as she fed me, no more cries, no more tears. And then she said even all through middle school, high school, she's like, if you were a little testy or you seemed like you were a little ornery, I would feed you and you're all good. When in doubt, feed Joe. And I think I'm still like that to a certain extent.
There you go. There you go. It's funny. She probably saw when you were a baby, your growing body, and you were already bench pressing like 200 pounds. And she's like, my kid is only a year and a half. He needs
Yeah.
protein. Give him protein.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that about me. I broke the Guinness Book of World Records for strongest baby alive. I can actually bench more when I was a baby than I can right now. Oh my gosh.
Oh God. Good
I'm
stuff.
just, you know why I'm laughing so hard? Because I'm picturing this little baby with just absurd pythons connected to each arm.
Oh God. Now I
And he's
already know
just-
what the poster is going to be. I
And
already
he's
know what the
just
poster's
looking
gonna
up,
be.
and the picture, and he can't actually speak real words, but there's a little bubble in the caption of the photo of him, and it just says, "Mom, protein."
A slice of pizza or a protein
Yeah.
shake. Mom, protein shake.
Yeah.
The poster now, Joe's going to use AI to generate a baby doing bench pressing, and it's going to be on the
Pizza.
poster for this
Don't forget
episode.
the pepperoni.
Oh God.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
It's probably what we're going to do. So people who get hangry, to say they miss a meal by accident and they feel lethargic, it's your conditioning. It's because you've trained your brain and your body to expect a meal and sugar at this time. I always suggest when you want to try fasting, just start by skipping breakfast. Start there. Once that becomes easier, then you can start adding in skipping lunch. Once that becomes easier, then you can work your way up to OMAD and just eat once a night. You could also eat once in the morning if you want. Some people do that, but it all depends on your rhythm and your schedule. I prefer to eat at night. It helps me sleep, and then I like to sleep it off and then start. I don't want to wake up and start my day and eat a giant meal because it just feels like too much. I get lethargic if I eat too much, and then I want to relax. So you get the itis.
Yeah.
But that's also if you're eating a lot of carbs. But I think for most people, the problem when they're getting annoyed because they haven't eaten something is because of the conditioning in their brain. Their brain and their body is expecting something, and now they're not getting it. And that's just all really from like a basis of a sugar connection. Like people say, I need energy to do this, so I have to eat something if I'm going to go do this work thing, or if I'm going to go do. I don't believe it. I am so used to being in a fasted state that I prefer to do workouts in a fasted state. I prefer to do any activities I have to take care of in a fasted state. I don't like to really eat until I'm sort of finished.
You bring up a good point that I hadn't quite put my finger on, is the idea that, yes, people do feel like, oh, my blood sugar is lower, I'm ornery, or I can't focus, I can't think on this right now, I need to eat something, I haven't eaten anything. But that's because right now their body maybe really does need that because their body hasn't adjusted or gotten used to the idea of only eating at night. Once your body does get used to that, or you give it a few
Right.
days or you work into it, then maybe you won't have that feeling anymore. Which,
Correct.
I'm not saying that's correct or not. I'm just saying you make a good point. Maybe that's why people haven't really given it the shot. They haven't sort of retrained their body because for 30, 40 years, whatever, their body expects one thing. They're not in one day going to be able to retrain their entire physiological and neurological pathways to be like, okay, yeah, I can do this now.
Right. So another way you could explain it is what's known as the keto flu. So people who immediately start the keto diet, they hear about it, they try it out, and they really commit. They go through the hunger pains and they feel just shitty in general. There's all kinds of different symptoms to it. But all it is because you're dropping carbs suddenly. Your body's going, wait, I'm so used to getting that glucose and storing it in the body. And all of a sudden the glucose is gone, and the glucose has been frozen in your body forever. Jason Fung talks about this. He talks about how
Dr. Jason Fung.
Correct. Dr. Jason Fung, F-U-N-G. Love him. Great guy. Puts out lots of great videos, lots of free articles, has a great book called The Obesity Code. One of the people doing some of the great work out there and sort of leading millions of people on their fasting journey. So he talks about the glucose being stored in your body, and it's in freezer storage. And it doesn't come out and it doesn't mobilize until you stop putting in more glucose. So once you stop eating all the carbs and also stop eating 3 meals a day, because you really need 16 to 20 hours to get any sort of fasting benefits, that's OMAD. Once you stop the digestion and ingesting of these carbs, now your body can start to unfreeze the fat stores and burn that for energy. Stored body fat actually burns as clean energy. It does incredible stuff. Also like autophagy.
I was going
We
to say
talked
this
about
is a
already.
perfect segue to the science behind autophagy and how it's something that our body does as a normal process, but that fasting speeds that up and enhances
Right.
your autophagy. So tell
Correct.
us what you've learned about that, Zach.
So, autophagy is a process that is always happening in the body. The thing about fasting is that it amplifies it and it speeds it up. So, people who start fasting realize they're feeling better, they're feeling lighter, they're thinking more clearly, they have more energy. And people ask me why I fast, and it's one of the things that bothers me all the time. They go, "Is it religious? Can you eat fish?" And I'm like, what the fuck are you even talking? Fish? What are you talking about? It's fasting. I'm not eating for a period of time. I've had a million conversations with people who have so many weird questions about fasting and don't actually want to try it. They just want to know if I'm a crazy person or not. So I tell people I fast. Here are the main reasons I fast. One, it's easy. It increases your youthful look. Okay. My skin still looks like it did 10 years ago. So there's youthful appearance. It also reverses disease. It's literally proven to reverse aging. There's so many benefits to it. You save money, you have more time rather than, I can't do this right now because I have to sit down and I have to have this meal. No, that free time is back. There are so many benefits that are easily found on Google. You can look all this up yourself. So, what happens with autophagy? Every day there are millions of dead cells in your body and things are shedding and coming apart, whatever. It's normal. When you start fasting, essentially what happens is the new cells eat the dead cells. So you need at least 16 to 20 hours on an empty stomach. And that's an OMAD. So that's a 20-hour day and you have a 4-hour eating window. But usually you're done eating within 30, 45 minutes. So you're not eating for 4 hours, although you could spread it out if you wanted to. But really, to get the basic benefits of fasting, you have to fast from 16 to 20 hours. Anything less, you're just on some kind of diet. You're just on some kind of calorie restriction. Until there is zero sugar in your body for 16 hours to 20 hours, you're not getting the benefits of a fast. So just be aware of that. The other thing about autophagy, and this is really cool too. So autophagy is basically healing your body. So when you're eating 3 meals a day and your body is constantly working in digestion mode, the digestive tract, since it never has a chance to rest, the body can't do its process of cleaning and healing things up. And that's what autophagy is. So when you do OMAD, you get a burst of autophagy. You get a more of a burst than normal, and it's essentially good for you. You're going to be sick less. You're going to look better because your skin is healing. There's just tons of benefits to it. And Jason Fung also has another book that has to do with cancer. And cancer comes when it comes. Some people are unluckier than others. But there is a fasting protocol for people who have to do chemo. And that's within Jason Fung's book. And people who have done it basically helps with the treatment and all that. So it's because the body needs the garbage out so that it can heal the body before you eat again.
I have
So
read some
that's
research about how cancer really feeds on sugar, and that a lot of people have found good evidence or help from low sugar or no sugar diets as far as reducing the spread and growth of their cancers.
correct. Sugar is actually the worst drug out there. Sugar will eat you from the inside out. Now, with a
And they
fasting
say
regimen,
one of the most addicting substances on earth is sugar too.
yeah. And with a fasting regimen, you could ingest more sugar if you want, because you're giving yourself a break. You can have sugar if you want. It's sort of like a treat if you want it, as long as you're still doing your fasting in between.
Would you
You
say
can.
autophagy is, in your opinion, the number one best benefit of fasting because it's literally your body healing itself, getting rid of those old or dead cells and rebuilding and growing those new and healthier ones, allowing those other ones to really thrive within the body without those dead or old ones?
That's exactly what's happening. When you go into a fasting regimen, autophagy is basically cleaning you out. There's another thing that people are concerned about with fasting, which is muscle loss, which is also a myth. When you fast, right, because your body's going into survival mode because there's no food coming in. So when you fast, there's a process that's called protein sparing. Jason Fung talks about this too, that if you have muscle on your body and you also have stored body fat and there's no food and you're in a fasted state, the body is not going to say, oh no, there's no food here. What am I going to do? I'm going to eat my own muscle. It's not true. Any muscle fibers that you lose in a fast are dead cells. So that's what the autophagy is pulling from. But the body is smart enough to know that if I have stored body fat and there's no food coming in, that is what I'm going to eat. Okay. That's one of the questions that used to bother me so much. You tell people you're fasting and they say, but you need energy. How could you not eat? How could you not eat? Are you crazy? I'm not crazy. They say, where does your energy come from? I go, from my stored body fat. That's why the body stores fat, so that it has energy to burn. When you're fasting, the body knows what it's doing. We don't need to go too deep into protein sparing. It's a literal thing. You do not lose muscle when you fast. Several years ago, I want to say it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I started seeing in the news that Olympic athletes, Olympic medal winners, were using intermittent fasting for their training. And I went, fuck yes, this is great. And now you've got celebrities talking about intermittent fasting. It is just a crazy health craze that's
It's
going
really
on.
taken off, right?
I'm so happy that it's getting more exposure to the world. And that's really thanks to the internet age and all that. So yeah, I swear by fasting as a way of
Now,
life.
Zach, how many years have you been doing that 1 meal a day, essentially fasting as a lifestyle? How many years have you been doing it?
So I'm mainly stuck with OMAD for probably roughly a decade, because I started in 2011, and then come 2021, that was the first year post-COVID shutdown. So that was definitely about a decade of OMAD. Throughout that time, I would occasionally try to fast 2 or 3 days just to see how much longer I could go. But I really wouldn't start 2-day fasting until 2022 is when I
Okay.
began experimenting with. I do more alternate day fasting. So my fasting window is now normally 40 to 45 hours for a meal.
Roughly, you've been incorporating fasting into your lifestyle for just over
13, 13
about
years.
about 13 years.
Yeah.
So then, to play devil's advocate here, what do you say to, say, a guy that's a real fitness nut who's pretty buff, that's asking you about fasting, and he's like, well, you've been doing it for 13 years. I was 60 pounds overweight, and now I'm in the best shape of my life, body fat percentage around 12%. I'm ripped, six pack, muscles everywhere, and I'm doing 3-4 meals a day. And I've only been doing it for 2.5 years, and I'm already looking like amazing shape. You've been doing fasting for 13 years, and you still have that extra body fat that you want to lose. So why should I believe in fasting?
Because I love beer. That's my weakness. And one of the reasons I increased my fasting window, really in 2019, just before COVID, okay, I was probably at the best shape of my life. Then COVID hit, and just like everyone else, I was eating whatever the fuck. I was
Yeah.
drinking whatever the fuck,
Yeah,
you
I
know?
think I was definitely drinking more during COVID too, because
I
you're just
put
at
on
home and you're
come
not
on.
out and
I
about
mean,
as much.
I put on a shit ton of pandemic weight. Now, if you remember, Joe, I just wrapped 30 days of no alcohol. Okay. I probably lost about 10 pounds of body fat just from that. All
Wow.
right. And when I kicked it off for the first week, I did a 7-day water fast. All right. And I did that because when I did it a year ago, 30 days no alcohol, I did a 5-day water fast to kick it off. So this year I wanted to do 7 and make a new record. And I did. And I felt fucking amazing. Okay. Now, because I wasn't drinking for 30 days, I was increasing my fast window. So as I was doing 2-day fasting, followed by 3-day fasting, followed by 2-day fasting. Then I got a cold. Why did I get a cold? Because I did a 7-day water fast, and I probably processed some really deep, nasty old shit that had never been processed out of my body. So this is one of the reasons why people do fasting. It's a matter of longevity. I also don't push it on anybody. That guy in the gym who's doing perfect, and he's asking me, why should I do fasting if I'm doing incredible, and I look how I want to look, and I'm big muscularly, and I have 3-4 meals a day. And why should I try fasting? And to that, I would say, are you happy with what you're doing? And if the answer is yes, I'm good. Then I say, great, keep doing what you're doing. I would only say, if he wanted a suggestion, I would tell him, if you want to increase your health markers overall, not just the way you look, but you want to increase the longevity of your heart, your lungs, your liver,
Maybe
etc.,
how your
your gut,
skin looks even.
maybe how your skin looks, your gut biome. Instead of eating 3 to 4 meals a day, because the human body is not a factory like a processing plant, You start taking a break from eating so that autophagy could kick in. Some people don't need fasting for their physical look. They've nailed their physical appearance. People choose to do fasting for the inside work in the body so that things can heal
Right.
and last longer. Fasting is about longevity. Fasting is about so that when you're 82 years old, you still move around like you're 45, because that's the effect that fasting has on your body. That guy who's going to keep eating 3-4 meals a day when he gets older, he might be sluggish. He may not enjoy it. And like I say, I never push it on anybody. People
Yeah.
want to talk to me. Now I'm going to direct them to this podcast when they ask me about fasting. I'm going to say, sorry, go listen to Joe and Zach pod. I don't talk about fasting anymore. But here's a link where you can
The
listen
first
and get
rule of
started.
fasting is I don't talk about fasting anymore. The second rule of fasting is go listen to the Joe and Zach pod about fasting.
Correct. And actually, Joe, the first rule you just said is actually a rule among fasters.
Is it really? That's pretty funny.
It's literally a rule, because fasters know you don't talk about fasting because everyone naysays you and they kind of shame you for it, or they think you're crazy, and it gets frustrating. Nobody needs to know your business. If you want to fast, you fast. And
Right.
end of story. So it's a real rule. I
And
don't
one
push
thing
it on anyone.
I'll say I've learned over the last probably at least 10 years, but I think maybe over the last 5 years or so, it's become a lot more prevalent, is that nutritionalists have found out and learned that what doctors say doesn't necessarily reflect what, because doctors are there about like curing diseases, helping people, prescribing medicine, or doing actual procedures or surgeries. And they're amazing. Believe me, I have a lot of doctors in my family. But I know doctors that even themselves will say, you should really see this nutritionist that's going to help you figure out what diet works best for you. Because yes, doctors are there to help advise and help you out, but they're not there on the ground studying the nutrition all the time. And there's been a lot of stuff that's come out in the last, like I said, 10 years. It's an expanding field, but at least in the last 5 years, is that everybody really is so different. And what might work great for one person doesn't necessarily work great for the other person. Just like allergies. There's been a lot of things that have come out in the last 5 years about different allergies that people have, and the detection of allergies in certain foods that aggravates people's biomes and their gut health and whatnot. Gut health in general is, again, an expanding field, and that has to do with what you put into your body, right? And so
Correct.
I'm a huge believer on what works for one person not necessarily going to work for the other person. Some people can eat pasta and feel great and it makes them look good. And other people, when they eat pasta, they feel sluggish and big and slow. Everybody's body processes things differently. And I'm not just talking
Right.
about allergies. I'm just talking about nutrition in general. What nutrition works well for one person doesn't necessarily work great for others. And I've even found in myself, I've experienced a lot with different nutritions, especially back when I was doing the fitness modeling thing, but now I'm still big into health and fitness. I'll find that there's certain foods that just, they aggravate my stomach. Maybe they give me some gas, or I don't feel like in the gym I get as big a pump or I get as much benefit from my workouts. And it's been really interesting as I've learned and just learned to listen and be more in tune with my body, as I learn more about just what foods work for me and what foods just work great for other people. One thing isn't going to work for every person. You really need to experiment with your own self. And like Zach said, if you want, experiment with fasting, go right ahead. Just give yourself some time and see if it works for you. And at the end of the day, I think Zach hit on the point that can never be said enough, I think, which is the point of life, in my opinion, is, are you happy? Does it make you happy? Do you feel good? If you can say yes to those things, then probably keep doing what you're doing. If you can't, maybe try something else until you get to that point where you are happy and you do feel good and you like who you are.
100%. It's either for you or it's not for you. I just understand the benefits of it, and I feel them too. You know, one of the reasons last year when I decided a year ago to do 30 days of no alcohol is because I was dealing with some blood pressure problems, and I didn't want to immediately be on blood pressure medication for the rest of my life, because that's what these cardiologists do. That's a whole other story. So I went to my doctor. He looked at my pressure. It was a little high. He wanted to immediately send me to a cardiologist. I said, okay, hang on. I'm going to do what I know works from my research. And for a month, I'm going to stop alcohol and I'm going to do some of my fasting, and I'll reconnect with you in 30 days before we go to the next step with seeing a cardio. So I did 30 days no alcohol. I bought a blood pressure monitor and I was watching it. And literally within the second week, no alcohol plus my 2 and 3 day fasting, my pressure was normal, completely normal. I went
That's
back to my
great.
doctor and I went back to my doctor in 30 days. of no alcohol. He checked my pressure. He said it was fine. I said, do you think I need medication now? He said, no, you don't. And I got all excited and I tried to show him my fasting schedule because I tracked it and I tracked the hours between meals and everything. And he looked at me like I was crazy. And he goes, I don't understand how this fasting is sustainable. Are you sure you should be doing this? I looked at him. I said, okay, we can agree to disagree, doctor, but you would agree my blood pressure is normal, right? He said, well, yeah. I said, yeah, think about that. Thank you for your time.
Well, hey,
So
we are what we eat, right? And yeah, there's a
yes,
ton of studies out there that what you put in your body greatly affects your blood pressure. That's why a lot of people with high blood pressure are advised to change their diets up because they're eating a lot of
fasting
things
is
that are
fa-
exacerbating that
fasting.
problem.
Fasting is the quickest way to fix your blood pressure. Had I gone to the cardiologist who would have put me on medication, that's blood meds for the rest of your life. Most likely, 90% of the time, that's what happens. I didn't want to take that
Well,
medication for the rest
and
of my
then
life.
God forbid you're taking the blood pressure medicine and then you do fast on top of it, then your blood pressure might be too low.
Correct.
And then
Correct.
you run the risk
Yeah.
of the side effects of low blood pressure. And at that point, no one's monitoring you, and you might not even know that you're getting so low. So that can be scary in
Yeah.
itself.
For sure. And I've also discovered something about 2 years ago in terms of fasting. If you get a cold, the common cold, okay, and I tried it out about 2 years ago, it was the first time because I remember doing OMAD while having a cold for about 3 months, and this fucking cold wouldn't go away. I hated that time. So about 2 years ago, I had a cold and I was doing more fasting. I was doing extended fasting. So I do more, like I said, I don't just do OMAD anymore. I do 2-day fasting. I do 3-day fasting. Anything longer is you could do you could do 5 days once a month if you want. That's okay. But recommended really 2-day fasting. But I discovered when I had a cold, if you just fast for 24 hours, and you can have black coffee if you want. If you just fast for 24 hours, it kills the cold dead in its tracks. I've done it twice now. I get a cold, I fast for 24 hours, sniffles, mucus, everything, fever, gone. 24 hours. Kills
That's
the
pretty
cold.
crazy.
So,
I find that hard to believe. I mean, I believe it happened
yeah,
for you, but I find it hard to believe that that would actually help. But
I've done it twice. I've done it
truthfully,
twice in my
I don't
life.
know. For me,
You,
I'm putting tons of really good, nice nutrients in my body and a shit
yeah.
ton of fluids and soup and all that stuff to knock a cold, and that always works for me.
Probably
But
because what's
hey,
happening is
there's probably more than one way to do it.
any small amount of sugar while you have a cold, even if it's coming from the right source, is probably keeping that cold alive. So a 24-hour fast will kill a cold dead in its tracks. I've done it twice, only in recent years. So pretty cool stuff.
It's interesting.
Um, yeah. The other thing, fasting is now proven. I can't believe we haven't mentioned this yet. You can Google this. Fasting is proven to reverse type 2 diabetes. Okay. Diabetes is an onset for people later in life because their blood work is so bad from poor diet, poor lifestyle. They develop type 2 diabetes. The body stops producing insulin, etc. Fasting reverses type 2 diabetes. Google it. It's pretty
Wow.
fucking crazy. Doctors are becoming more aware of the benefits of fasting. Fasting is
I had
starting.
never even heard about that one.
Yeah. Fasting is starting to be documented on medical paperwork. So when you see your doctor and they're doing your categories and this and that and what's your lifestyle, blah, 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 fasting is now included as a category on medical paperwork, which is pretty wild because 15 years ago, fasting was considered, at least by the mainstream, crazy and not good for you. But listen, human beings have been fasting for thousands of years. It's normal. It's in our DNA. It's part of our genetic makeup. So I just want to point out, tiny little bullet list. Anyone who's curious about fasting, Jason Fung, Fung on YouTube, one of the greatest places you can start. There is another one, Dr. Eric Berg, Berg, a great doctor, not just fasting, but all kinds of things. For the ladies, there is a doctor by the name of Mindy Pelz, Pelz. She's a pretty robust Instagram presence. And she does the work specifically for women because women and their hormones and their cycles have to sometimes take a different approach to fasting. So she's got that covered for the ladies. And I've also found one of the reasons for me doing OMAD for such a long time and not making any more progress is because my body became adapted to OMAD. My body got used to OMAD. So it wasn't really giving me much more progress except for a little bit of autophagy every day. What I discovered is that I had a new time period to hit, which was the 36 hours. And I discovered the 36-hour fast from Mindy Pels. 36 hours fasting is basically a day and a half. And that is the new bottom line, that if you have that stubborn belly fat or you get that little side boob going on and you're trying to get rid of this fat once and for all,
Well, some
and you're
people
not,
like to see the side boob, Zach.
yeah, well, for after dark, you're going to get some side boob before you get a feet pic. But I just want to say that really 36 hours is the new gold standard for me. So doing OMAD every day, I wasn't doing enough. OMAD is really for maintenance mode. So I have to do extended fasting to burn off the rest of this fat, 36 to 42 hours. And I do it and I love it. I feel incredible every time I do it. I go to sleep. I take a magnesium to help me sleep. Doesn't break a fast. It's well known in the fasting community. And anytime I've got a 40-hour fast, and I aim to do basically a rolling 40 hours. So I do a 40-hour fast, have my meal. 40-hour fast, have my meal, et cetera, et cetera. Works for me, may not work for someone else. But once I get down to where I want to be and I'm happy with how I look physically on the outside and most of the fat's gone, now I can go back to OMAD, and that's maintenance. The other benefits to OMAD is that it's flexible. Fasting in general is flexible. You need to break a fast, start again, no big deal. You only get 20 hours in, you want it to go longer, try again the next day. You only got 10 hours in, great, aim for 12 hours the next day. You can literally rinse and repeat and try again. So go ahead, Google all of those doctors, watch videos, educate yourself. If you're on Facebook, there's a community you can join called the Fasting Network by Jason Fung, and I forget the other person's name, but it's easily found. I'm a big fan of fasting. It's a way of life for me. It always will be. And that's plenty of ground, I think, covered on my end for anybody who wants to jump on Google and start doing the research.
Thanks, Zach. Yeah. And for me, I experiment with fasting here and there. I've done some intermittent fasting. I have done a whole week of just one meal a day, and it was interesting. I won't say I love it. I won't say I hated it either. It was just I'm glad I did it to learn about my body and learn how it affected me. There was both pros and cons, I would say. But yeah, try it out if you're interested. It's not my way of life, but it's Zach's way of life, and he loves it, and it works great for him. And I have felt some benefits to fasting myself, so you never know. But glad to talk about it. Thanks, Zach, for all your expertise and knowledge about it. Thank you for those wonderful references that people can learn more. And thank you for being so open and honest about your own journey.
Absolutely happy to share. I'm just glad I'm not the only person that does fasting anymore on planet Earth. There's millions of us now.
Yeah, I do remember when you first started that warrior diet. Me personally, I was like, what? No, that's crazy. That can't be healthy.
Yeah,
And now tons of
exactly.
people do it. And, I think I was wrong for being as skeptical as I was at the time, but I didn't know any better. Like you said, that's what we're taught.
People aren't educated. We're taught a certain thing. We're brought up a certain way. People don't know it until they find it. And fasting for me was like, this fucking works. I love this. I feel good. I'm happy with it. And if you're doing something that's making you happy, or if it's not making you happy, that's up to you to change.
Yeah.
So it's as simple as that. If it feels good, do it. If it doesn't feel good, stop doing it. End of story.
Yeah. Well, let's not do all things that feel good.
Correct. After dark, we can go really bad here with that one. So yeah.
Not all things that feel good are good for you, but yeah, no, and that was a good lesson for me to learn to be a little bit more open when something initially strikes me as whoa, no way, or when I'm initially very resistant to an idea. Be a little more open, try and see somebody else's side of it. That was a good lesson for me on that one. But thank you so much, Zach. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our listeners, of course. Please do subscribe and rate the podcast if you liked this episode. And you can always contact us if there's something else you had a question about or you want to learn more about. Definitely contact us on the socials, and we're happy to delve more into a topic or touch on a new topic that maybe you want to hear us talk about.
Send us a DM on Instagram. It's probably the quickest you'll reach us. But remember, we're available everywhere. We are also on YouTube for anyone who doesn't listen on Apple, Google, or Spotify. Our episodes are on YouTube. You can always listen there. Go ham. Enjoy the podcast. We're here for you guys.
I love it. Thanks, guys. Tune in next week for another episode of the Joe and Zack Podcast.
Pew, pew, pew.
Beep, 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 boo. Good stuff, Zachy. Now I'm going to go eat an entire large pizza.
Sounds great. Fantastic.
Pepperoni only.